Gosh, it is freezing here in Albuquerque. I don't know about you guys. I had to run some errands this morning, and the wind is bitter cold today. I know. I shouldn't complain because they're having worse weather elsewhere. I have a friend in Topeka, and she told me it was going to be a blizzard all day. So how do you like the new digs, right? I'm at the center. I thought I'd dress it up a little so you guys had something to look at. Besides me. Today, we're going to talk about what is it you need to unlearn so you can quit creating it in your life. And I'll tell you why I wanted to talk about this today. There seems to be this silly misconception that what happens in the world is happening in the world, and it doesn't really have anything to do with us spiritually. And I laugh about that because of course it does. The energies out there affect us, and we know this. And we're part of the creation of what's happening in our world today. Some people may think that that's not really not a big deal because they don't believe in what's happening out there. But we're all contributors by our belief system. So if we think that there isn't enough money in our lives, then we're contributing to the global thought that there's not enough in the world. The world is full of lack. And it's those kind of things that we need to unlearn so we quit creating it in our life, so it quits playing out on the national, state, city, global stage. We need to move past this concept of the 3D mindset that we have to work diligent and hard and focused, and we must, go without and sacrifice, because that's how I grew up. And I remember my dad putting us all of us kids to work when we were young. I started in the yard work when I was 11, and I was working the front desk by the time I was 12, and people were shocked that a 12-year-old was checking them in at 7 o'clock at night. Most 12-year-olds were home, and here I was working a desk shift, and that's just the kind of life I had. I don't complain about it because it really taught me some great things, and I met some fantastic people from all over the world. So I had a broader view of life, and it's played out in my world in what I needed to unlearn in order to create a better life for myself. And that's kind of why this topic is about learning positive, more forward-thinking thought processes instead of being beaten down by the old dogma from religions. I know that we have that thought that, if we're not good, we're going to pay for it. Well, that kind of happened as kids. If you didn't clean your room, you got in trouble, right? We know that. There were rules. But that's as far as it goes. What they didn't explain is why those rules were there. So, we look at karma as being a payback tool. And if we look at karma in a little different light as being a tool for spiritual unfoldment, then we get away from that fear factor that we're creating something that's going to come back to bite us. And that also plays out in our relationships. One of the things that cracks me up is I'm the only one in my family that was married once. Most of my family, I think the one next to me, 2 marriages. One sister with 2 marriages. I have a little brother and sister. They're happily married to one person. They didn't get divorced, but I'm talking about my core unit, the one that I grew up with that had effect on my life. So my older sisters all got married and remarried because that's what we were taught by our parents. It was the dysfunction. And we had to go through and unlearn a lot of that, whereas I was the youngest and I saw what didn't work and how to make it play out in my life a little differently. So in our relationships, we have a tendency to try to get people to act the way our parents acted. and interact that way. They say, oh, you married your mom or you married your dad. Well, it's true, because we start doing the things over and over again that are the same as our parents did, and the same behaviors that they had in order to create those situations, so that we realized we didn't have to have it in our life. But because we were young and we were impressionable children, we were impressed that, you know, the man had to do, I had a friend that told me, the man does the outside of the housework, he does everything outside, and I do everything inside. And I thought, well, that's kind of bizarre, because I've always been really handy and I love working in the yard. I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I did the yard work and he washed the windows, because I hate windows, okay? Wouldn't that be a really amazing thing that we could share in working that relationship in the household that way? Well, needless to say, everybody I dated was just like my dad, which meant the woman did everything. She took care of everything and he just supplied the money. Well, I didn't have relationships like that either, because I didn't like that either. So my struggle was having to find that happy balance. And I found that it played out in every relationship that I had. I had expectations that were predicated on what I was shown. So again, what is it that we need to unlearn so that we quit creating it? Well, knowing that's in relationships, we know that every relationship we have certain expectations. We have the expectation that maybe your friend is supposed to pick up the phone every Tuesday at 10 o'clock because she's going to know that it's you calling. And the first time she doesn't, that feels like an abandonment or a betrayal. And we learn that maybe that's something that happened to you as a child. And so we go through all this exhausting stuff trying to unpack our emotional baggage. When, if we just changed our thinking into a more spiritual aspect and looked at our life in a more fulfilling aspect, like, you know what, if I'm available at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays and she is too, great. No harm, no foul. We get to talk. That's the time that I have, may not be the time that she has. And we really work at trying to undo those high expectations. And we go through friends, we go through family relationships, and it's so traumatizing because we think that we took it personal. Our friend she must not like us, or that guy that we really dated that we thought he just dumped us because he wanted some other woman. We find out that it was because we treated him less than what he was trying to learn something different, in other words, and we were treating him like his mother treated his father, and he didn't really like the way his mother did. But that's where we have to own the pattern. We set the stage for how people treat us. And if you don't want somebody to treat you like your parent, or like your father did your mother, and if we don't want somebody to, we don't want our children to learn what we did, then we change our patterns of behavior. We change the way we talk to each other. My mother was a fanatic about a clean house. I mean, insane. We had to scrub the inside of the toilet tank where the float is. Baseboards were done. I remember the normal spring cleaning where you take the screens down and you hose them down, everybody had to wash. We did that kind of stuff all the time. My mother was a fantastic housewife. She had 4 kids. I'm not saying everything was perfect, but she could clean a house and she could cook a meal. And I have 3 sisters that didn't turn out quite like her, but I did. And it took me a while. My kids were like, do we have to clean again? And it dawned on me I was repeating my mom's patterns. So with that being said, I thought I should be enjoying my kids' life. So that's when we would start doing picnics on Saturday at the park, or we would go and do something up in the mountains. I stopped cleaning house fanatically, but I did make it a deal with the kids that they had to keep their rooms clean and they had to do certain things, because the other end of that is that your environment expresses to you your peace of mind. You'll meditate better, you'll feel better if your dishes are done, or if you're not having to wade through your dirty laundry, because the guilt, it's not that the dirty laundry is that big of a deal, it's the guilt that you're going, oh God, I gotta get to the laundry, or oh God, I gotta take care of this, or God forbid somebody should come over right now and see that, I haven't made my bed in 3 weeks. It's about finding the balance. So we have to unlearn the things that we thought were so important that we have overemphasized in our life, and bring a little fun back in. Now, I realize that that's kind of hard to do, because we're all in quarantine, so to speak. And I realize that has a lot to do with what's happening to us globally or nationally, is that people are, they have too much time on their hands, they're not doing things for each other, they're not making a commitment to invest their time making their life better. They're fighting on the internet, they're making ugly TikToks, they're on all these different social media sites ranting and raving about horrible things. And that negativity builds, and it builds in your home, and it builds in your life. So if you really think that these horrible things are happening, then you're going to build that negativity in your life, and it doesn't help you with your spiritual growth. Why is it important that we grow spiritually? Well, that's what we're here for. I know that the funny thing about that is that people think that if they have their spirit gifts, that's growing spiritually. I can tell you that there are people out there that are some of the meanest people I've ever met in my life, and they're very psychic. My dad was so incredibly psychic that the energy would just hit you. And he was very powerful, but he was very negative. So he was constantly nagging and nagging and nagging. And it was very traumatizing to us kids, I mean, we'd be sitting at the kitchen table for dinner, and it would be 2 hours of being yelled at, and it was enough. It was getting up in the morning and going for breakfast, and you get yelled at. So being psychic is not being spiritual. Having gifts of mediumship isn't about being spiritual. It's not about progressing. Because people can have gifts of spirit and not use them in the correct manner. Some people will use them for personal gain. They'll use it to feed their ego. Again, my dad. Yeah, he was a nag. Anyway, it's this thought process that we go through that we have to learn and relearn, and we have to open our mind up to other ways of doing things, about energy transference, and about how the world works, and expanding our minds so that we're not limited to the only way to do a thing is to do it the way I was taught. I was talking to a friend of mine, her daughter, she had just talked to her daughter the night before about this guy that couldn't get a job. He was a friend of her daughter's, and he had cut the hole in his face, and where my generation is going to go ill. And she tried to explain to her daughter, if I own a business, I don't want an employee that looks like that, because I want my customers to be focused on my business, not the fact that he's cut a hole in his cheek and you can see his teeth and his tongue, and his tongue's been forked, and whatever. Or that he's got all these different things going on, because, those are extreme cases. But I remember back telling my son about his ear piercing when he did the bar. People are going to look at you negatively because it's not typical. And that negative energy flicks back out on you. And then you're negative. And hi, Rosie. Hi, Chloe. That's one of those things that we come into that we sadly neglect to really own our power in so much of everything, because we keep trying to stay with the status quo. We keep trying to learn all the things that we have to learn, but we don't break the patterns of what we learned before. So if there's only one way to vacuum the floor, then your floor will only be vacuumed one way. And it doesn't open up to possibilities that it might be an easier way if you got a Roomba. Because technology has moved on, the world has moved on. It's that thought process that when we're trying to have our work relationships and be in our environment, that we really have to think about what it is that we create. What did we sign on for? So if you make a commitment, nobody likes a commitment that's broken, right? We all like everybody to be in their integrity and to own their commitments. So if we go into this world and we say, okay, I'm going to commit to getting up at 7 o'clock every day, and I'm going to make my breakfast, go for my walk, and the dogs go with me, then the dogs are part of that routine of going for that walk. And they need to know that that's part of their routine for them. But is it? Is it any different for them because they don't know what time is if they go for that walk after breakfast because that's what's usual? Or what if you were able to take them for a longer walk after lunch? So we can modify our belief systems, but only if we let ourselves. And that goes for our gifts of spirit. If we think that the only thing that we can do is that one thing, then we've limited. What if we thought that the only way we could do healing was through Reiki? Because that's the only way healing happens. Well, that limits your ability as a healer. That limits your intuition. That limits the treatment that you're giving to the person, because you have gifts that surpass Reiki, that surpass anything that you've ever known. But if you don't start to unlearn the one thing that's got you in that box, you're not going to reach those unlimited aspects of yourself. It's a hard concept that we go through. I think part of the hardest thing for me is that I laugh because I'm a product of habit. I am a creature of habit. I do the same thing over and over again because my ADHD is really, really bad. And there are times that if I haven't slept in my circadian rhythm time, I'm completely out of whack. So if I stay up till 10 o'clock and I get up at my normal time of 3 or 4, which is my window of waking, and it has been for years, then that 10 o'clock hour, I'm kind of off my day the rest of the day. So then I go to sleep. I might be watching a movie or reading a book, and I start nodding off at 6 in the evening. And that, again, starts affecting my circadian rhythms. So I try to stay on that, because the more my rhythms are off, the worse my memory becomes. And the worse my memory becomes, well, it affects my business, it affects my relationships, I get cranky, my diet goes kind of haywire, so I start living off of sugar, which makes my moods go off. Do you see where I'm going with this? So there are things that we have to understand about our own physical body. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and I don't want you guys to, on the quote thing, I don't think that the perfect diet is right for everybody, because not everybody can eat the perfect diet. I can't eat wheat, okay? It just is not a good thing in my world. It makes me really sick. So just because wheat is good in fiber and it's supposed to be great for everybody, it doesn't mean it's good for me. I don't know if you remember the milk commercial, milk, it's good for everybody. And then they said I had to take that off the air because they found out it wasn't. And that situation of people saying that, it wasn't true. It wasn't truth in advertising. So it's the same process. When you're trying to find your spiritual ground, when you're trying to find your spiritual opening, Not every book is going to be the book that leads you to that epiphany. Not every person is going to be able to teach you the things that you need. So having teachers, or being open to different teachings, or going out and being open to an experience of sharing, lets you realize you're also the teacher. So I don't want any of you guys to think that you're not teaching people, or you don't know enough, or that you're a really great student but you're not a teacher, because by your actions, by your heart, by the things that you show the world, you're teaching somebody to unlearn what they need to unlearn in order to create their best them. All of us have some beautiful connection to each other, that we have the ability to touch each other's lives. If we are limiting our connection to each other, if we limit that thought process and we think that we're not valuable, then it plays out in our relationships, and then we start having those situations digress, and our fun in our relationship, we get divorced, we don't speak to our sisters or our brothers, we don't talk to our parents, or we're fighting with our coworkers. The hardest thing to do is understand that we're there to learn, and when we make those mistakes, when we overstep our boundaries and we do something really stupid, one of the best things to do is go, you know what? I need to learn not to do that thing. I need to unlearn how I shouldn't speak my mind, because not everybody wants to hear everything that's on your mind. My mother was blunt. I would sit there at the store, my eyes were like this big, and I'm blunt, but my mother beats me hands down, and had no equivocation, and I would just be, oh, holy cow, Mom, you shouldn't say that to her. It's not her fault that you had to wait in line. And she goes, yes, it is. She shouldn't have been talking to that woman. I said, but that customer in front of you was talking to her. She was paid to be respectful to the customers. It's not her fault. She goes, well, then she should have shut that woman up. It was always somebody else's responsibility, never our own, and owning what we're doing and our behavior that should change, and never understanding we should be apologizing, or we should be owning those situations. So these are the things that we can do, that we can start unlearning our habits. I hope I gave you a few things that might be good for your weekend. I know everybody wants to know what's going to happen next week. Gosh, that's a really good question. What I'm going to tell you guys is, put a lot of white light around you, okay? I don't care if it's good, bad, or indifferent. Put that white light around you. Love each other. Send love and healing to everybody that you know. Ask the universe, ask your spirit teachers, your guide, come in, help us through this time, because you know what? This is our opportunity to wake up. This is our spiritual awakening. This isn't a national thing. This isn't a political thing. This is our world. It's not owned by the Illuminati. It's not owned by our bosses. It's not owned by our ministers. It's not owned by our psychic. It's us. This is our opportunity to grow. This is our awakening. So take your awakening next week. Grab it, embrace it, love it, hold on to it. Know that you are the best today than you've ever been, and you're going to be even better tomorrow. My heart to all of yours. Mwah! Love you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye now.